Oh, this is the third to last episode, right? Because the penultimate is next Wednesday, and it was a talking episode.
This is why Reed's not here. He knew we were about to pop off about this. It was like, I can't do it anymore. I'm joking. But yeah, talking's the best way to put it because I feel like our conversation about it will get further than this episode of The Flash actually got because what happened? uh, yeah, what a way to end the streak. We had two sensational episodes back to back that even if they weren't perfect, still felt like the Flash of old in a very high standard. And now this felt like typical season 9 Flash, which we've had for about 10 episodes already this season. And it just brought every bit of tension to a standstill. And like, is that what we needed with the third last episode?
No, it is strange because Barry is missing, and yet the level of energy here was at a low. They were trying to like build it for us, and I'm like, the only one who seems to be reasonably panicked is Iris. The rest of y'all acting like it's a regular Tuesday. I just don't understand. And then when Mark walked in, like he was going to be like the hero, I was like, Mark, the audience did not miss you. This slow reveal walk in did nothing for us. Move to the point. For me, I wish we'd actually spent, and this is funny because I never actually cared for Eddie's character, but I actually wish we'd spent time building the Eddie plot because that is much more interesting than all of them running around doing nothing in the Flash lab until Barry just appears. They didn't even help, he just appears.
What did I say about the Flash from the Red Death? That's been my biggest issue this season. The end of the world is happening, so let's just stand around and talk about it. And that's exactly what they did throughout this whole episode. This man had been missing for 6 hours, yet they only managed to put a plot into place 6 hours after that. And where was the sense of urgency, people? He could have died in those 6 hours. And then after that, we're going to stand and talk some more. And Chilblain's going to save the day with his ice gauntlets, which aren't going to bring Barry back. Okay. Um, I liked the Eddie stuff. I agree. That was by far the most interesting part of the episode because there was an actual mystery there. Rather than watching B characters, Iris aside, rather than watching B characters be like, let's go save the A character and then make no effort whatsoever to save the A character. It just felt like I don't want to rail on it too hard because it was a decent episode of television. But how many decent episodes of television have we had of The Flash that went absolutely nowhere? This would have easily been forgivable if it was the fourth episode of the season that we moved on from it. It's the third to last episode of the season in a season full of these types of episodes already. So does that make it better? Does that make it worse? Who knows at this point? But I liked I liked the Khione stuff because it feels like we're finally moving somewhere with this character. But aside from that, the problem is that they did all of that interesting development in the 9 month time jump. So suddenly now she's literally Mother Nature basically, and we find that out off screen. Why? If a Batman show made built Poison Ivy up over 9 months and we didn't see why she was so powerful, I wouldn't like that. Why are we supposed to expect it with Keon and the Flash? I just thought she's such an interesting character, and yet you've spent 9, 10 episodes having her off screen meditating, thinking about who she is, pining over Mark, apparently, who she didn't really get on with in the first place and wanted to replace her. And you could have been doing this with her. I think Danielle Hannabaker thrives in this role, and yet, huh, I'm going to meditate, is all we've been getting from her for the last 9 episodes. Why didn't we get more of this? She's a powerful queen. She destroyed the negative Speed Force avatar in seconds. And we're only going to get 2 episodes of that when you could have had 9, 10 episodes of that instead. Like my issue, I said about the Team Flash, they're making out that Cecile's the most powerful meta-human in all of Central City, because she can levitate a coffee mug towards her. First of all, we haven't seen any more of that. Why did they drop
Mm-mm.
that? We're making out that Cecile is the big leader of Team Flash. The Flash will always be the leader of Team Flash, but here we have Khione, who actually is probably the most powerful creature that the show has ever given us. And we spent 9 episodes doing nothing with her. And we're only going to get her for 2 more episodes before she's like, peace, I'm off to save the rest of the world. Probably so they can bring Caitlin back. I hope so they can bring Caitlin back because that death was hideous. What? So I think he owns a perfect example of the season. So much potential, and yet none of it realized.
I don't get why she's a goddess. Like I just, she pops out the machine, and we are a goddess. Like no science. Like I at least with the show, appreciated that even if the science makes no darn sense, that they at least attempt. But for her, she's like, I'm gonna introduce plant cells into your bloodstream, and I'm gonna make you like all green, but it's okay to wear off. Like, I'm so happy to have helped you. I'm like, okay, sure. I mean, it does make that not make sense. It does have like great effects. When she saves Mark, who is apparently her bestie for reasons, that special effects was really cool and horrifying to see him down into soil, and then her to just build him back up in the same soil. Again, the science isn't sciencing, because she said that, you know, we come from dust. And I was like, stardust, not soil. She's like, but okay. Sure.
Like, where does his soul go? Where does his heart go? Where does all the things that make his body work go? I mean, like, if you've someone that powerful on your, I can see why they're ending the show now, because if you have someone that powerful on your team, ain't no crime happening in Central City, besties.
Yeah.
Flash can retire. Just Khione can just like meditate and sit, make the world the best place ever, and that'd be it. And Batwoman can retire. Supergirl can retire. The Arrowverse doesn't need any new heroes if Khione's there. Maybe that's why they wasted 9 episodes having her figure herself out. But I just feel like this character has gone from um supporting Z-list character to Scarlet Witch level power overnight, and we needed more than that. And I love everything about what she can do. I say Danielle Panabaker plays the role really, really well, but like, it's not that they didn't have the time to tell a coherent story. I just said Superman and Lois is telling a coherent story in 13 episodes. It's not that they didn't have the time, but I would have much rather a 13 episode season might be shorter than a 22 episode season. So yeah, you've less time in that sense, but they could have given her the time she was warranted rather than having us 6, 7 episodes of Chester and Allegra. Will they, won't they, will they, won't they, will they, won't they? And Cecile being all happy about her husband leaving her and moving to another city so that she can go off and be a superhero. The drama ain't dramaing, and there were much better storylines they could have told. Khione doesn't need to be front and center of the Flash's final season, but she could have been an original supporting character in the way that Caitlin was or Cisco was, and we could have gotten some decent stories there. Everyone is starting to be supporting characters in the way that Chester, Allegra, and Cecile are, in that if you're not the A team, you're the B team, and that's it. There's no layers to the Flash's storytelling anymore. And this episode, it did not create the biggest sins as far as that went, but it did fall victim to some of the old tropes again. And where do you go from there? The show has learned nothing. We thought maybe after 2 solid episodes it learned something. Right back to square one, and we're running out of time for it to write the course again.
Yeah, it's really weird because was with it being a talking episode and a like chicken run around with its head cut off episode with no direction. Like, Allegra was benched. Chester said some science mumbo jumbo and then let a possessed Mark set the thing because he didn't know he was possessed, and that was sort of the end of him. Iris worried the entire episode, and we got some callbacks to Crisis, but that was kind of the end all and be all of her. Loved her shoes. Oh, and she went into labor for like half a second. I was like, I know you're not bringing this child into the world, and Barry's not here. I will fight you online. I was like getting so scared. I was like, I know she's not about to give birth, and he's trapped in another timeline. I refuse. But well, he's gone again though, isn't he? She's in the middle of labor, and he has popped away for reasons unknown. And now Eddie is coming back because he's found himself. But just to move into the Eddie plot, not that well done, but more interesting than what was going on. I thought that he was in a different timeline, but it appears he is actually in Barry and Iris's timeline. He's just been working at Mercury Labs.
Yeah.
That confused me.
I missed a small portion of this episode, so I'm not sure. Is he in the future or is he in the present? I'm so confused because why is that officer who wore the uniform now suddenly in the captain's office? Where is Kramer? Did I miss all of that?
Okay, that's what I was confused about. I was like, did I miss a little piece of text where it said what year it was? Because I was like, I thought he wasn't even in Barry and Iris's timeline, but apparently he's somewhere, because the homegirl who was green at the beginning of the episode suddenly was not green anymore when he was breaking into Iris's magazine, well, newspaper. So much. So thank you for that because I didn't know what was going on. So apparently we must be in the future.
I'm pretty sure I saw like a billboard or something when he was walking down the street. By the way, I love the Blade Runner effect of the city or whatever. It was like blue, it was neon, it was like all those close-ups on all the people looking at him. And on that note, Kayla Compton, who plays Allegra, did a beautiful job directing this episode. It was very visual.
Oh,
It was
nice.
very what's that word? um Engaging. It brought you into the world. It made you feel things. And I know the script kind of let it down, but from a visual standpoint, it was an excellent episode. And I feel like it really thrived from the Eddie standpoint in that sense, because I'm pretty sure one of the neon screens in the background when he was walking down that smoky alleyway said 2049 on it.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
like, if we're in 2049, that cop and that CCC media employee aged remarkably well. You're telling me they look exactly the same in 20, nearly 30 years from the future? Okay, I'll let it slide. This is the same 2049 that has Iris with the grey streaks in her hair, and Nora and Bart as adults, but those two aged looking exactly the same. Well, sure, but if we can get over that, I assume he's in 2049, which is why this officer is now the captain. Um, and I think they did it. I think they made the office slightly different looking, because isn't Kramer's desk at the back, whereas her desk was at the side of the room. So they definitely did something to try and make it look different. Um, it worked. It wasn't the most effective, but it did what it set out to do. I think I'm right as far as where Eddie is exists in the timeline. I don't know what we're doing here, but yeah, I feel like it did what it was supposed to do. It was definitely the most interesting part of the episode, and yeah, we're doing exactly what we thought. So his name's Malcolm Gilmore. Is that what it said on his ID?
Mhm.
Um, so that's interesting. I don't know what how he's going to have come back, but we did. I love the fact that they brought back the season one finale story. Eddie was sucked into that wormhole, and we haven't seen him since, which is why they obviously had to bury an empty casket. So it all makes sense. It does all feel like it's coming full circle. I do think we needed more than 4 episodes to tell the story, though, because Eddie was such an important character in the first season. Yes, the show's moved on from him, but you can't watch that first season without thinking, bless Eddie, I miss him, or he had his purpose. And they did a great job when they brought him back in season two. And when that time when Barry went back in time and got him to fill in the message for Iris, you got all teary eyed and all, because they did such a good job with that character for being the arrogant, good looking cop. He had such a heart of gold. He deserved better than what happened to him. So I feel like he needed more than just these 4 episodes, especially if we're going full throttle villain now, and he's just going to be bad guy. Hopefully they'll find a way to redeem him, but if they find a way to redeem him, does that mean he has to die again? I fear that they don't have enough time to tell the story with the nuance that it needs, especially since we've been building here for 9 seasons. But I'm happy to see them finally doing it, because I feel like, as far as the Flash bucket list goes, this was one of the last storylines they never really got to tick off. So I'm glad we're going there now.
I'm opposite of you.
Why?
But
Tell me why.
I think it's, but putting my feelings about Eddie aside, which he's a fine character, I just wanted to get to West Allen faster.
Mhm.
I just
Yeah,
felt like they didn't need to do that in season one. So not another, so it's another one of those storylines where I feel like we waited too long. Like it should
yeah,
have
I'm
been
with you on that.
a storyline that should have happened earlier in the series. I just, if he's been living his life for this long, I kind of wanted him to just have his feelings for the current day, right? Instead of, it feels like a regression to go back to where Eddie was at that time period. The Eddie who dies in season one, him falling off the ledge of sanity, finding out that like Iris moved on, and not only did she moved on with Barry, makes sense. But this Eddie has been living his life for I don't know how many decades, unaware of what happened previously, unless they're going to give us some seated conversation about how he always felt like something was missing, how he felt like he couldn't find love and he didn't know why. Then I would sort of understand it. But now it just seems like this man became so obsessed with figuring out who Eddie was that then he somehow takes on Eddie's persona, which is like, Malcolm, how loose were we from sanity? That it only took a few hours for you to decide to walk into a random man's life and be angry about what happened to him when you don't necessarily have to have been him.
Hmm.
But we'll see. Like you said, we needed nuance. I really, watching this and watching him dig up the grave, I was like, why wasn't this the series ending plot? Like it made more sense for this to be the 13 episode plot than having it be the last 4 episodes, because it's big enough to do a whole season on.
It is. And I feel like I agree with you. I think maybe they waited too long, but I think that could go back to the whole did the Flash stay on Earth for too long
Mm.
conversation, because it makes sense to finally bring this back as the final season storyline. I think it's a beautiful idea on the final season, but we've brought Eddie back multiple times for different reasons. The first couple of times in the alternate timelines, in the Speed Force and the Vision and the whatever, they all worked like a treat. But then the show went through this big long period where there was no Eddie stuff in the middle of the series as we headed towards the Crisis and Eric Wallace story. And then last season we brought him back as that evil manifestation of, what was it, the forces or something, the trapped Iris in the apartment or something. Um,
I think.
Something like that. And I'm like, okay, we did Evil Eddie already, and now I have to do him again because we're doing the final season, and it's also related to the negative forces. It feels like maybe they went to the well one too many times with that, so it doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't resonate with me in the way that it would have if they'd done it in like season 4, 5, or 6, and the show ended at season 4, 5, or 6. If you know what I mean. If we hadn't seen Eddie at all since the season 1 finale, now I would be losing my mind. But it does feel a little bit like been there, done that. We're only doing this because the show's ending kind of vibe, if you know what I mean. Whereas maybe if the show had ended around season 6 or 7, we'd be like, oh, wow, they're doing it. And if it wasn't truncated into 4 episodes, it might feel a little bit better. It just feels like I love the Red Death stuff. I didn't love what they did with it, but I love the Red Death stuff. I just feel like I'm not sure that was good enough to warrant the final storyline the show ever tackles being only 4 episodes. And don't even get me started on the interlude episodes, because what was the point in those? Oliver aside, what was the point in those? The season's been very, very messy, but you've seen a lot of potential in the middle of it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm conflicted's the best way to put it, I think.
Yeah, well, because it is an intriguing storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I think even part of me wishes he wasn't living a different life. If this was really just Eddie who came back to like, because he has this line in the promo about feeling like they forgot about him. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, people don't forget about you, but they do move on. The Eddie from season 1 finding out that he is not the love of Iris's life, I could see him being corrupted by superpowers and turning evil over it. If Barry can lose his mind thanks to, and that was season 1, right? Thanks to whatever had gotten he got whammied with, where he was so jealous that he nearly
Yeah.
killed Eddie, then we
Yeah.
can have an Eddie who gets transformed by the negative Speed Force's energy, where that negative piece that he was holding on to about not feeling good enough just explodes, and we get a very dangerous man on our hands. Like that is endlessly interesting. What loving it. Why the last 3? Like it really could be a good plot, especially if we're talking about love and the way that love can turn toxic, especially when you care for someone deeply and that other person is not your soulmate. Like Iris and Barry are soulmates, and Eddie in season 1 would not have been able to handle that.
Mm-hmm. But I also think that goes back to the way of how strong the Flash's character just development used to be. I know so many people were indifferent to Eddie because he was essentially just the obstacle in the West Allen story. But as a character, he was so well storylined that it's totally believable that this would happen. In that, like, I care about him, even if it's been 9 years. I care about him. I would rather watch an Eddie centric episode of him finding out that his life was taken by Barry rather than a Chester and Allegra centric episode. The show has not done a good job with its current characters in the way that the original show did. So even now we have a different creative team bringing Eddie Thawne back. I'm just like, Eddie, welcome back. Whereas if Chester and Allegra showed up in the first season, they would be much easier to like characters. Like, give me Cisco over Chester and Allegra any day of the week. Give me Eddie over them any day of the week. Give me season 1 recurring Cecile over the Cecile we have now any day of the week. I just feel like the show forgot how to build characters, and the fact that we care so much, and even if we don't care that much, but the fact that we care so much about a returning season 1 character over half of the characters we have now does say a little bit about the state of the current show at the moment.
It does, because it's the only plot we care about right now, because it's the best one that they have going. Eddie slipping into madness is going to be very intriguing, and it was comically villainous. Like I really enjoyed the spiral into just mess. That was a very sweaty man by the time we
Yes, it
got to
was.
the we got to the end. And then, when the officers, I don't know what that was she was holding against him. I was like, is it a taser? Is it a new form of energy gun? Like, what are we doing? But like
That's
when
another thing that made me think it was the future. I think it's supposed to be futuristic guns.
I guess so. But like when the red lightning flashes behind him, I was like, okay, Frankenstein. Like
Yeah.
it was just like a really nice touch of it being like over the top and campy, but still
Mhm.
working.
Oh yeah, that was like such a theatrical Undertaker moment. Rise from the grave and the lightning strikes. Very, very effective. I love comic book shows when they lean into the silly comic book campy nature. And this is exactly what they did. The Flash has been a different 70s kind of TV show, kind of cheesy over the last 3 years, and it hasn't really worked for it. But yet when it leans into the campier comic book, and because you've got all that levels of mythology and years of stories to tell, that's when it's at its best. Season one was lighthearted without ever and cheesy without ever being corny, and that's something the Flash has forgotten. When you can do little moments like that, like the lightning strike, that feels like the Flash of old, even if it is so over the top, it hit you over the head with it. But I still feel like that's the Flash I love. That's the Flash I know at mess. And that's the Flash I hope we get to see in the final two episodes. My goodness. Because there were, no pun intended, flashes of brilliance in this episode. It just was unfortunately chose the wrong plot, in my opinion.
Mm.
Um, it was again, I don't want to, this was not the worst episode of the season. It just came at the absolute worst time because you thought the show had finally figured itself out again, and now here we are back to square one. It was fine for what it was, but yeah, the Eddie stuff was far more interesting, and I'm glad that that's where we're going with the final two episodes. The negative Speed Force is not is it's a force to be reckoned with. But it's not the best villain they've ever had, but I mean, at least it brings this whole storyline full circle. I feel like we're going to see a few evil speedsters show up now, just as in the show's greatest hits tour, which in my opinion should have lasted far longer than the final two episodes.
Yeah, the negative Speed Force though, I was like, oh, not again. No,
Who
no.
are you?
That's we did not build them. So he's like, I'm gonna kill Barry and your little one too. And I was like, okay. Like I don't like you're not new to us, but I want you to retire, hang it up, get a different
Right.
villain. But I just speaking of things about going like nostalgic things, I wish we'd spent more time on Iris's fear of being left because of unforeseen circumstances concerning Barry. I really loved her moment of leaving him a message because she didn't know whether or not he well, she'd survive. And then looking at the newspaper for crisis, I was like, girl, I'll be back here though. It's hurtful. Like, but it makes sense because she has always lived with the fear that one day he will just disappear and she won't be able to find him. So I did like her scene with Cecile. And I was like, why wasn't this Iris's plot? She was for the whole season. She's entering a new, you would think that with her being pregnant with Nora, her mind wouldn't be able to let that go. Like, yes, he lived past crisis, but what if something else happens? And I'm left alone to raise this baby by myself. And like, he keeps
Mhm.
trying to give me these future things, but what if the future thing doesn't happen? Like, Barry, slow down for a second. We need to talk. I have trauma. Like, I would just really love if they had done that.
Yeah, I agree. And it was not, I struggle with what they're doing with Iris this season, and then a lot of her storylines feel like, but didn't we already deal with that already? Like that odd who done a time loop
I
episode
don't
thing in the
know.
middle of the season. That was the most bizarre episode. But like this was a drama or a conflict that felt totally authentic for the character. We've seen them do it before, but very, very well. So yeah, even though it did feel like, can we not figure out where Iris is going this season? Her husband had been kidnapped by a mysterious blue force. It would totally make sense that we'd be back here. And I did. I loved the fact that we got to see the old Crisis draft as well, even if it's a different photo from the first season. I think the Crisis itself updated that. And we've got that like heavily photo shoot photo of Barry like that there that I think was the season six thing. Like, did you just get your husband to pose for that photograph and stick it in the paper? But like this is the stuff that a final season should be full of. I just watched the series finale of Titans, which is a show that didn't know it was going to end, and somehow their final episode felt like a beautifully nostalgic trip through memory lane that tied up all of the show's main storylines. The Flash should have spent its 13 episodes doing that rather than giving us typical run of the mill stories that are not pulling on your heartstrings, that are the most basic character tropes like Chester and Allegra falling in love and then kissing in front of everyone, and then like, but did we really want to do that? No, I don't know. Oh, I love you, but he didn't say it back. They're the most basic character tropes we can do just to get them to a certain point, in that all the other characters have suffered as a result. And we've seen in Iris's storylines that just felt a bit run of the mill this season. This felt like good drama, and this felt like some of the storylines we should have been seeing throughout the season. And Cecile can be used beautifully when they do it right. And this was an example of them using Cecile right. Like she's Iris' stepmother, and we basically have never seen the two share a scene together ever. Why have we not seen more of that? Especially when it produces results like this. Candace acted all those conversations in this episode incredibly. And I just wish we got to spend more time with the people, not their character trope storylines that we've done all season. There's just so much more. I feel like we're going to end the season thinking that we didn't do everything we could have. And considering the show knew it had 13 episodes to end with, that should not have been the case.
No, well, I'm hoping that we end whelmed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I please just end whelmed. Don't need to be overwhelmed at this point because it's not coming. But
No.
whelmed, like, well, I feel like I might be overwhelmed by the series finale, but it'll have nothing to do with what they give us, most likely, and everything to do with saying goodbye to the show.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. If they bring back all the like that rumor, if they bring back all the evil speedsters from the show's run, I'm going to be like, oh, remember Savitar? Hey, Zoom, and all of that. That'll be fun. That's the stuff I want to see from a final season. And I think for a little while it'll add some rose tinted glasses onto the show and thinking, yeah, that ended well. But when I have to think about ranking the seasons or whatever, it's going to be very hard for me to get season 9 out of last place. And it's not the
Mm.
worst season. Season 4 and season 7 are arguably worse, but it's by far the most disappointing season because they knew what they were supposed to do going in there, and they haven't done it. And I'm like, how could you drop the ball so severely when you knew these recurring issues over the last 3 seasons? You're like, let's do them again anyway. I feel like the final season deserved better than that. The show deserved better than that. And I don't want to focus on the negatives because I do think we potentially have 2 incredible episodes left ahead. But it just feels like we kind of find our way back to the darkness after 2 episodes of beautiful, beautiful light. And I just hope that light encapsulates the final 2 episodes of the show.
Manifesting that.
Fingers
Manifesting
crossed.
that for us both and the rest of the Flash fandom, because there's nothing they can fix now. It's in the can, and it's gonna air regardless. So we'll hopefully love something about it and be able to have a glowing review for Reed for the penultimate and the finale, and for us.
Yeah, we want Reed to come back to nothing but positive vibes.
I know.